we're going to kick it off. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Downham, and I am the Vice President of Social Enterprise for the Harvard Business School Club of Toronto. I am a graduate of the AMP class of 1997. For those in attendance who may not be familiar with our club, we are a nonprofit organization whose vision is to create a lifelong HBS experience for Toronto-based alumni and make a positive impact in the HBS community and beyond. We aim to deliver on our mission through three focus areas: relationships, education, and community. Today, we wish to inspire those leading a nonprofit or for-profit organization as we share the lessons learned from social enterprise scholarship winners. You will see that these lessons are unique, but most are transferable. Our speakers are some of our past HBS Club of Toronto Social Enterprise Scholarship winners. Serrano Wendy, Chief Executive Officer, Skills for Change. Wendy Porch, Executive Director, Center for Independent Living in Toronto. And Adam Fair, VP of Strategy and Impact for Prosper Canada. Our scholarship winners this year will share learnings from their experience and from the HBS programs, which have not only enhanced their own careers, taught them global best practices, and allowed them to connect with exceptional like-minded professionals. HBS of Toronto's social enterprise scholarships are made possible through the support provided to the club by our sponsors and the Toronto HBS community. This year, we are offering two programs. Our flagship executive education leadership program will take place in person on the HBS campus. It is called the Strategic Perspectives in Nonprofit Management Program and designed for CEOs and executive directors of nonprofit organizations. Two of our guest speakers today have attended these courses. It is taught by a team of faculty members from HBS and other graduate schools within Harvard University. This year, we have two scholarships available. Our second program is called Driving Nonprofit Performance and Innovation Virtual, and it is designed for nonprofit leaders committed to improving their organization's performance measurement and impact. As stated, it will be a virtual program. This year, we have one scholarship available. So for those of you that are interested, please spread the word. The scholarship applications are now open. Deadlines are rapidly approaching, so there's not a lot of time. The SPNM application deadline is February the 21st, and the DNPIV application deadline is February the 11th. Please go to the Harvard Business School Club of Toronto website for all information and application forms. It's very comprehensive, and I think you'll learn everything you need there. If not, reach out to me, and we'll get you the information that you need. So I've said enough. That's the introduction of who we are. Again, welcome to all that are on the call with us today. And I'm really honored to be leading this conversation and delighted to have three awesome folks with us today to share their stories. So I'm going to call upon Surranna first to open up the conversation and introduce herself and talk a little bit about who she is, what her job is, what Skills for Change is all about, and share with our group a little bit of background on her. So Serrano, welcome.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much, HBS Club Toronto, for inviting me today to talk about my experience in this great program. And thanks to Adam and Wendy for being part of the panel with me. I'm very excited to learn about your experiences because we went different years. So as Jim said, I am Serrano Wendy. I'm the CEO of Skills for Change. Skills for Change, we are going to be 40 years old in October. And we are an organization that's focused on serving immigrants and refugees and helping them in their integration and settlement in Canada. And I've been in this capacity for the last 9 years. It just felt a little bit faster. I can't believe it's 9 years already. And my background was in entrepreneurship and human resources management. And I came into the nonprofit space having never worked in the environment before, bringing that entrepreneurial spin and a background that includes an MBA in HR management and MA in leadership and management. So in bringing that capacity here is helping for the organization to be scaled and broaden its programs and services to really take from just helping immigrants get jobs to focusing the last few years on mental health services, leadership development, entrepreneurship, programming, and women-specific initiatives that allow us to have a broader suite of services and offerings that see the whole immigrant experience, from immigrant youth, immigrant women, immigrant seniors to internationally trained professionals. And over the last few years, after my experience in the SBNM program and my learning and opportunities that I identify, I'm actually back at Harvard doing a master's in liberal arts in development practice that is focused on sustainable development, in particular looking at the sustainable development goals and how it influences the work that we're doing at Skills for Change around SDG 1 and no poverty, SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and 10 around eliminating inequality. So that experience that I had in 2018 really helped to dramatically change the way I do my leadership practice, and also the kind of further academic development that I pursued in order to really enhance my capabilities to support the work of my organization, my colleagues in the organization, my broader community, and my board of directors.
Surranna, that's an amazing story. Thank you so much for providing that insight. You and I hadn't talked about that. Really quickly, so you're in the middle of the conversation with pretty much everything that's going on and what makes Canada what it is. We're a society of immigrants at the end of the day. So you're on the front of the lines. Is that correct? As I understand?
Yeah. Absolutely. And for us, it's about helping to build welcoming and equitable communities for immigrants and refugees, so ensuring that they have good, decent jobs, that they have good relationships with other community members through mentorship, that they understand Canadian cultures and values so they can align with that and support that and enhance it through what the uniqueness that each of them bring to Canada, and helping to build this wonderful nation. And immigrants, as you say, we've built Canada, supports Canada, will continue to be very, very critical to Canada's continued economic prosperity. So if organizations such as Skills for Change can be at the front line in helping to ensure that newcomers are fully engaged in the economy, not we're not talking about low paying jobs. We want their skills, their knowledge and expertise to be leveraged fully to support economic growth, community development, and then we support them in also civic engagement too. So it's the whole part of being a newcomer: a great job, build a great family, build connections, contribute to society, and help to move Canada forward.
Well, I love to see your passion. That's awesome. So that's a subject very near and dear to my heart. Congratulations, and your continuing education at Harvard.
Oh, I'm excited there. I'm a little bit fortunate because with the COVID situation, we get to do everything online. I was like, yay. But also it's similar to the SBNN. I get to go to class with folks from all over the world who are doing critical development work at the community level, at the global level. And I'm learning from everybody as I'm learning from the professors and within the program. It's this continual relationship building that I love about the Harvard experience.
That's awesome. What year was it that you attended?
I attended in 2018. That was way before all the drama, and you could travel freely and you could hug people and touch people. And so I had that lovely experience then.
Yeah, good for you. So you were able to get on campus. So
yes.
Well, now I'd like to welcome Wendy Porch. Welcome, Wendy. You and I have had a few conversations. I love the work that you're doing as well. And it's quite a different area, but it's really about helping people. So congratulations and welcome. Please tell us your story.
Thank you, James. And so nice to see everybody here today, too. I felt very lucky to have the opportunity to undertake the strategic nonprofit strategic management perspectives course through Harvard Business School Club. My background is actually in nonprofits, and particularly around disability. So I've worked in the human rights field related to people with disabilities for about 25 years. I started that many years ago at Arch, which is a nonprofit legal aid center clinic in Ontario here for people with disabilities. And in the intervening years, I've been a research fellow. I've done quite a lot of work with the University of Toronto around adaptive technologies. I was a research fellow in accessible media in education at the Open University in the UK. So I've lived abroad for a number of years as well. And just before SILT, I worked at a national nonprofit that supported people living with HIV. So my heart is really around making sure that when we're talking about equity and opportunity, that we're really talking about everybody, that everybody has a seat at the table. And in my experience, unfortunately, I think sometimes we see that people with disabilities are still not thought of in the context of those kinds of conversations. So that's the work that I do. I'm the executive director, as you said, of SILT, the Center for Independent Living in Toronto. We call it SILT. We're different than a lot of disability organizations that you might have encountered before. We are what's called consumer controlled. And in our context, in our world, consumer means individual with disabilities. So these are the folks with disabilities themselves. I'm a person with a disability. The majority of my board, in terms of our bylaws, is required to be people with disabilities, including our president and our vice president. So we really work to support people with disabilities in making their own voices heard, and in making sure that they have the same opportunities to make choices, to take risks, to determine for themselves what they do with their lives, and that they have the supports and information that they need to do that. We're one of 28 independent living centers in Canada, and one of many, many independent living centers internationally. We, because we have this focus on consumer-led, and because we really work to make sure that people with disabilities are at the center of everything that we do, many of our programs are different from the kinds of programs that you might see in the context of disability organizations. One of our main programs is a self-managed attendant service program, where the individual with a disability who would typically be receiving those services from a managed, from an organization that would send out a PSW. In the case of our program, it's totally innovative. The individual with the disability gets funding from the government through us to hire their own supports. And as you can see, it completely changes the power dynamic of that relationship. That program has a budget of about $48 million. Wow. So it is a huge program, and it's province-wide in terms of scope. So, and the overall budget at SILT is around $50 million. So we look quite big on paper, but you know, we are really working hard to make sure that all of that money and all of the supports that we have available really do go to support individuals with disabilities in making their own choices. So that's the kind of work that we do at SILT. As I said, I felt very lucky to be a part of this program. We're so lean, even with $50 million, the majority of that goes to program provision, that I have very little opportunity to have conversations about the kinds of topics that we engaged with at Harvard. So strategic management, strategic visioning, even just things like board management. You know, I think I'm here because I have passion for the work and because of the experience I have, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be great at understanding how to manage and work with my board. And you know, those were topics that we engaged with across the course of the course itself. And they were also topics that were relevant for everybody. So it was really a wonderful learning experience, and I was so happy to be there and to take part. I went last year and it was fully virtual. So I did not get to go to campus, and I was so sad about that at the time. But I do have to say that I was thrilled to see Harvard doing remote learning, because it's not like anybody else doing remote learning. You really got to see the best of what's possible in a remote learning context. And it was very inspiring for me because most of our programs have become virtual. So in this context, we haven't been doing face-to-face programs since March 2020, like many of you. And so aside from the lessons and the connections and how wonderful all of that was, there was a living, breathing example of the best that you can do in the context of remote engagement. That was really incredible too.
That's an awesome story, Wendy. Thank you so much. And you know, as I'm listening to you and I reflect back on part of our process for our audience is that we do in-person interviews with the finalists. So it's quite a robust and rigorous process that we put people through. But it was one of those crazy days where it was March the 11th, 2020. I remember it clearly because it was my mother's birthday. but it was also the day before the world basically shut down and the NBA and the NHL started it off. But you got stuck in traffic or something, and we ended up interviewing you virtually. I think you were on your car phone, your cell phone, sitting in your car somewhere, and we did this 1 hour interview. Yeah, do you reflect on that? Where were you? And tell us about that. And you ended up getting chosen to go.
Which is incredible.
We didn't even get to meet you.
I was in Toronto Western Hospital, actually. So I had to be at the hospital for something for myself that day. And the timing was obviously terrible because I wanted to have this conversation with you. But it was also watching the hospital respond to this impending threat. So I was watching as things were, basically I was in the cafeteria at the hospital, and I was watching things close, and I could see people in real time putting on masks and kind of repositioning themselves. And in fact, it was as a result of that I went back to SILT and said, okay, everybody, boardroom, but stand far away from each other. We are going to have to pivot quite significantly. Tomorrow, we are not going to be here. So I want everybody to grab your things, grab your laptops, grab whatever it is that you need and go home. And we will connect on Monday to work it out. So it was the most dramatic. And for all of us, this has been the most dramatic period of pivot. I think that none of us ever could ever foresee. But somehow we've managed to do it. So, and yeah, that was an incredible experience to have that interview in the context of, the world really, really shifting so dramatically. So
yeah, it was one of those where were you moments for me. So,
yeah.
But I love what you said though about the virtual experience, and that you felt that although you missed going to the campus, and I know you'll get there someday, even if it's even just to go and visit it, because it's a dream come true. But tell us a little bit more about that virtual experience, because it was, they pivoted so quickly, and to make it as wholesome and as robust and make you feel as welcome, that's impressive. So well done. So just share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was incredible. So I think the format generally takes the same structure as it did on campus, in that we were part of a peer group. And so there was a case, sort of a case study process that underpinned all of our meetings, and we were assigned to this small group of 5, and we met with them on a daily basis. So that was a small Zoom group meeting that we could at least check in with individuals, which was great, because the other parts of the course were lectures where there were many hundreds of people involved. But some of the lectures, in particular, Dutch Leonard is an incredible lecturer anyway. And I like to think that all of the kind of charisma and just charisma that he brings to his lectures, we saw that certainly in terms of even the Zoom lectures that we were doing. They all began with music, which was lovely. And one of the professors, I'm struggling to recall his name, but he had a setup like nothing I've ever seen before. So he had a camera in front of him. He had a camera behind him. He could adjust the background depending on what we were talking about. He was also using a virtual whiteboard that we could all check into. And he actually was taking questions from the large group. And he would shift somehow in his setup to a camera behind him, so we could see his view of the whole of the class and see ourselves as part of the group. And I've never seen anything like that in a virtual teaching context before. And as I said, I was a research fellow at the Open University in the UK, which is a world leader in virtual teaching. And this was it was amazing. So I felt like I was still part of an incredible group of people who would come together to talk about these topics that, frankly, in the nonprofit sector, we don't have an opportunity to talk about. We have very little chance to have those kinds of connections. And I did get to see the best of how this could be undertaken under constrained circumstances, frankly.
Well, welcome to Harvard. That's an amazing experience. So great story. So thank you so much for all of that. I want to talk to you a little bit more about disability, because I agree with you. I think that they're the forgotten, let's call it, group of folks out there that need to be treated with a little more equality and respect. So well done, and congratulations on your fine work that you do. I'd now like to call on Adam to take over and introduce yourself. Adam, could you please take over the mic and let's hear from you, please. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, thanks so much. And so happy to be here. I feel like I could just listen to Serrano and Wendy all day. And I think there's a lot of connections between also some of the work that we're doing. So I'm really happy to be part of this conversation. So my name's Adam Fair. I'm the VP of Strategy and Impact at an organization called Prosper Canada. I've forgotten how long I've been there for. It's around 15 years. And I feel like I've been at every level of the organization. So I've in a way, I've grown up with the organization as well. Prosper Canada was founded in 1986, and the mission is to expand economic opportunity for Canadians living in poverty through both program and policy innovation. And so we're not a frontline organization or a frontline provider. Rather, we work with partners in all sectors right across the country to figure out what's holding people back from achieving greater financial security. What are the policies, programs, services that could help people move forward? And then how can we experiment to figure out what works? And if we find out programs or services or policies that work, how do we find sustainable ways to scale those across the country through partners? And so, you know, we're really trying to, in a broad sense, tackle what I sort of frame as two large market gaps. One is that we've identified in mainstream financial services a gap in terms of financial information products and services that meet the needs of low-income individuals and those that face other barriers. And so we're trying to work with partners to figure out how we can both up the game of mainstream financial services so that they are more inclusive and meeting the needs of diverse populations, but also figure out how we can design and scale community-based financial help services for individuals, which could be tax filing, benefit navigation, one-on-one financial help to support people to increase their income, reduce their debt, or build savings. The other market gap that we're trying to figure out how to close is really connected to government and the design of our government social safety net. We're lucky to live in Canada. There's a large network of benefits and services that are available to Canadians, but for far too many people, there's barriers in accessing those benefits. We estimate that over $1 billion every year gets left on the table because people have barriers to accessing benefits, or they don't know how to apply, or there's other challenges in their way. And so again, we're both trying to figure out how can we make these systems better at the government level, but also provide programs, services, and supports that can help people navigate which for some is a bit of a maze. You know, Wendy is thinking, you know, some of our work is actually working with people with disabilities, and talk about a group that has the hardest time in terms of accessing some of these benefits. It's so complicated because you've got bureaucracy involved, you have the medical professionals involved, there's just so many people involved. And so, you know, we should be providing a base level of financial support for everybody, but we haven't figured out how to do that quite well yet. And so that's something that we're working on. We just launched today a digital tool called the Benefit Wayfinder. You can find it at benefitswayfinder.org, which is actually a centralized repository of all of the federal and provincial benefits eligible for Canadians, and gives plain language instructions in terms of what you're eligible for and how to access it. So that's just an example of one of the types of solutions that we're working on at Prosper Canada. During the pandemic, like you know, Wendy and Surranna was talking about, most of the services that our partners were providing were in person and face-to-face. And so there was this great shift, very quick. I feel like someone's got to write case studies on this because there's so many Canadian success stories along this line. But we had to work with design firms, frontline providers, government to figure out how we were going to rejig some of these services to be available online and remote. And we were able to figure it out. Some of them actually required government changes in regulation because some of the programs we run were actually government delivered. And some of them just required us to figure out as a network of organizations on the ground how we were going to retool and figure out a new way of reaching people and providing that service in a high quality way. So it's been a really interesting journey. Obviously, there's been challenges along the way, but I think it's also been a unique success story. I was fortunate to attend the Driving Nonprofit Performance and Innovation program at Harvard. And so different from the one that Serrano and Wendy attended. And this one was in 2017, which was even longer ago. Like, I don't even know what I was doing in 2017. It's my brain has been erased from that moment, but it was a great experience. And I think because especially my job right now was really around helping the organization think about strategy, really lead the operational plan year over year, and then thinking about how we're setting up measurement frameworks and systems to make sure that we're on track and that we're learning around how we're progressing and how we can be most effective as an organization. The things that I was taught in the course were directly applicable to these to this work. And I was reflecting on something that you guys were saying earlier around, there's so much passion in our sector and in our field and in our organization, and there's such a drive to really figure out how we can spend every moment on driving our impact. And I think one of the insights for me on the value of this course, and also spending the time to step back, is that our best channel to drive consistent impact is having a strong organization, is making sure that the organization is viable, it's efficient, it's effective, it's getting the resources it needs to get the people to do the work. And so often we don't pay enough attention to that. And so I think this program was super practical, but it also made us think about that piece of it, which is like, if you're going to hit the impact you want to, you need to make sure that home base is in good shape and in good order. And so that's something that, I really took away from that experience, and I think has been beneficial to the whole organization.
Adam, that's a great way to end your comments, because I think that's one of the powerful things that Harvard teaches, and it's really at the core of everything they teach is leadership and taking risk and things like that. But building a strong organization, especially for something like what you're doing, or Serrano or Wendy or anybody really, is at the heart of existence and ultimately success. So congratulations, great story. And I feel for you for what you've been through with, I see the people delivering pizza in snowstorms on the streets of Toronto. And to think about what those folks do to earn a living is pretty remarkable. And, in the world that you live in, you see things that are far worse than that, I'm sure. And sometimes that's got to be tough to get up every day and just see that. And, it must be a bit of an uphill battle fighting that one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for us, we work with a network of frontline partners, and like we always say, like we talk about those nurses and doctors as frontline heroes, but it's also those service providers. It's those individuals that are, connecting to people and all of the little corners of every community where, it might be their only touch point with somebody. And so if everyone goes home, which happened with government and a lot of businesses, but, our sector didn't always have that opportunity, because yes, there was lots of success around leveraging digital to help reach people. And we actually learned that there's a whole new toolkit that we can now use into the future to provide services, which is a great kind of success story of this. But there's still individuals with limitations in their ability to receive services, or having the technology or the capability to receive services in that way. And so that's still an unanswered piece here. There's still people that are not being fully served in this moment, and we're all trying to figure out how to shine a little bit more light on that, and how we can make sure that those that do risk their own health to provide those services are recognized for the heroes that I think that they are.
Well, thank you to Surranna, Wendy, and Adam. These are all incredibly heartwarming stories, and I like what you said, Adam, as well, about the passion and the drive. I mean, you can see it, in all three of you, and it's powerful. And you must be incredibly proud of the work that you do. I'm so glad that we've all had the Harvard experience, and let's talk a little bit more about that now, and so that we can provide a little more insight to the audience as folks that may be considering putting applications in. So why don't we start with you, go back to you, Surranna, and a big part of the SPN program is focused on effective change management. And so what have you learned about your own responses and reflections as a change agent yourself? What have you learned?
So I think one of the critical things in some of the studies, we did a lot of case studies. So we were looking at real organizations and some of the particular challenges that they were navigating. I became an avid bird watcher because I learned about the Audubon Society, and I also didn't realize how very, very profitable that sector is. $250 million annual revenues, bird watching. Thank you. But from all of that, what was really critical for me around, my practice as a change agent was the critical understanding of building appropriate relationships throughout the organization, up, down, across, and external to the organization. The way the program was structured, which was great in person, we had our own little pods, and we were in a section on campus called Estevez House, and we were in the section 66. So we called ourselves Estevez 66. And so we met every morning and we did our case reviews. And then we would sort of brainstorm our learnings, understanding from that. And so from a change leadership perspective, the first piece was about effective communication and engagement around the issue or initiative that you're working through. And about mobilizing leaders who can support you as you move that forward. In my practice in the nonprofit space and governed by a board of directors is ensuring that your champions from the top of the organization throughout the drive to change, and that people are really aligned with what the future would look like from the change initiative. On an individual basis, what was really important for me in taking from this project, it's around the relationships and the importance of understanding that whatever I'm going through, there's probably someone out there who have either undergone that or currently going through that. So the criticality of building relationship with others to learn from their experiences, to tap into that and utilize that experience to enhance my change agent story and approach. The other part that I got from the program was a critical piece of figuring out where you want your organization to be, what kind of organization, and then what steps you need to take to bring change, to build that organization, to make that a reality. Who are the right people? What are the right processes? Are you in the right business? Are you doing the right thing? Are you measuring really well? Are the right people in place? Do they have the right competencies and capabilities? Are they supported? Do they feel valued? Are you communicating clearly? Is it clearly that everyone understands? Is there good buy-in for that? Are you measuring what your outcomes are? Are you iterating based on external factors? And I have to say that in 2020, a lot of what I learned in 2018 were really crystallized. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, so now I am going to use those skill sets, right? Right, that case study on Shackleton on the South Pole, which is a really cool case study on leadership and perseverance, and having one leader that people really glom onto. And you have to support people through really disaster, which is a great case study if you've not really learned about the Shackleton team and what they undergo in the South Pacific. I went back to that a lot. I also went back to the case study that we did in the Columbia disaster and how lack of communication, lack of people speaking up, and that helped me to do something which I'm trying to practice more with change, which is like creating psychological safety. So people can say, yeah, that's not gonna work. I'm sorry, yeah, it's not happening. To be able to feel confident to say, maybe we can look at it this way. And that takes a little bit of being present, right? So all of that through those case studies, the learning, through building relationship over 7 days with people. And my pod had folks from New Zealand, me from Canada, and across the US, and immediately building a relationship, learning how to communicate with different people, be able to listen effectively, create space for people to feel comfortable, leaning into a little bit of emotional intelligence, to be self-aware, to connect to people. All of those things that I practice over what may be considered a small time really help to make me a much more effective change leader today.
So you felt at home in that international community at Harvard, right?
I think that was
you left it in Canada and you caught up with it in Cambridge.
It was great. I showed up there and I'm like, oh yeah, this is Toronto. Everybody was from somewhere else. And it was that great diversity, ages, backgrounds, genders, sectors, subsectors in the third sector, like industry, like you're doing what now? That's interesting that you weren't unaware of. All of that was quite breathtaking, but also a great eye opener. And that people are doing immensely impactful work globally, work that has, small community impact that are critical to those community, and work that have bigger sector, regional, geographical impact that was also critical. And I appreciate that a lot, because I am going in there with one narrow perspective and experience, but then I'm seeing people apply the case studies to different contexts, and it opened up my eye to how I would look at problem solving and decision making and strategy and relationships and so forth in ways that I probably didn't do before. So I learned a lot from the professors, don't get me wrong, but I think I learned a lot more from the relationships that I built, to the point that this morning, before I came in, I sent an email to my team, my pod members who are still connected, to say, I'm going to talk about you all today in an hour. So, brag about my experience and the impact that you each had on my life over that 7 days in 2018 that I take with me throughout, my practice right now.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. That's something that I remember dearly from my experiences, because they were very similar. How about Wendy, your connections and connected, and that whole experience of being with the people from the world, right?
Yeah.
So similar experiences for you?
Very much. And, it's amazing to me that I had a very similar experience and we were doing it over the internet, right? So that's pretty incredible. But, through the kinds of things that we were talking about in terms of the teaching, but also we had virtual breakout rooms that the team at Harvard actually curated. So they were random one day, but on another day, I ended up in a virtual kind of breakout room with all disability service providers from around the world. And we all sort of recognized that they didn't tell you what the connection was going in, but, in talking and introducing yourself, it was, oh, okay, so you do that too, and you do that, and you do that. And we still stay in touch. And just to say also, as Surranna was saying, my pod, my peer group, is also still in touch. And so we regularly set up Zooms like this and have a bit of a chin wag around, what the issues were that we had discussed in our case studies, because we bring our own issues to our peer group, which is really critical. So we all have a bit of an insight into each other's, tricky spots. And we still get together and talk it through. So it was pretty incredible. And yeah, it's hard to believe that I had a similar experience just doing it over the internet, but I did.
Well, I think it's the Harvard experience, and it says everything about the quality of who they are and what they are and how they teach. So, you were in a different program, Adam, but you did have the benefit of the Harvard experience, on-campus experience. Tell us about your experience there. Was it similar in the sense that you were in working groups and like-minded people or different-minded people, or what did they do with you? How did they throw you into something wild and crazy?
Yeah, it was very similar. It sounds like a very similar structure. And so, sometimes I think in our world and our work, it's sometimes, people refer to it as like feeling like you're on an island, or you're kind of, even within your sector or your organization, you become insular in terms of like exposure to other ideas and ways of doing things. And so, similar to what was just said, I think one of the powerful pieces of it, it's kind of like these, in my mind, these like three ingredients. One, you have these great instructors who are taking a thoughtful but practical approach to sort of giving complex issues but simplifying it, and then they're providing real case examples that we could be thinking about how that relates to our world or not. But then, like everyone's saying, it's the other students that makes it, I think, really all kind of connect, because you are getting people from different countries. You're getting people from wildly different size organizations. One individual is from an organization of 500 people, and I'm working in one with 25. And so, and then different kind of subsectors within the nonprofit space. but also commonalities in terms of challenges, issues, things people are struggling with. And so I think working with, you know, the instructors, the contents and the cases, and then being able to kind of chew on it in large and small groups with other students, I think makes these ideas become real, and to help you to translate what that means for your organization and how you're doing things and how you could do things in the future. Like every day I feel like there's a moment where I'm like, I wish I had a playbook for this, or someone I could ask a question about this, and you don't often, I usually conclude that there isn't one that I can easily find, but in that kind of community that's created, I think that's the dynamic that was developed, which I thought was really powerful.
I love the thank you for that, Adam. I love the Shackleton. You pulled Shackleton. He was the skeleton in the closet, right? That you were able to, you learned 4 or 5 years ago, but you were able to pull him out of the closet when you went into the pandemic in 2020. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive, Surranna. Talk just a little bit more about that. We don't need to hear a lot about that, but the fact that you had a case study 5 years ago and all of a sudden, bam, I can use it today is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the for us, it was, you know, we had 2 days where we were like, for an organization that is 100% online with multiple sites, in person, multiple sites, we had to pivot to remote service delivery to a lot of clients who face digital equity issues, income issues that couldn't provide them to the kind of access that you and I take for granted. I'm chatting very comfortably with a strong internet service provider with a lovely laptop to access and present here, whereas much of our clients didn't have that luxury and privilege. So Shackleton was important about supporting like leadership and navigating through adversity and holding things together in the most difficult of situations, and having people who are looking toward you in this most, you know, perilous state to be emotionally strong, to not waver, to hold firm and have a good course of action with perils around you. No, I wasn't stuck on an ice where I was potentially starving to death, but we did have a lot of trauma with folks trying to learn technology and support their clients at the same time, transition to a new way of doing work, ensuring that the organization could survive the unknown. You know, we were initially saying it's 6 weeks, we're back in person in 6 weeks. Then the changes continue to come forward where, you know, your funding could be impacted, your ongoing sustainability. And then it comes to the issue where staff were also emotionally drained, not just because of themselves and their family commitments, because they were so concerned about the folks we're supposed to be serving who are now left pretty much adrift, and the compounded issues that they were facing around mental health, financial access to financial supports and resources, potentially being unhoused, many of our clients. So all of that increased pressure on what we had to do. And so I reflected back on the importance from the case study and from Shackleton and others was the criticality of there's no excuse but to be good at what you do and be very, very good at what you do as you navigate these challenges. You can't go, well, it is COVID-19, so we're going to take it easy. No, you need to figure out ways to excel because it's COVID-19, because this is an issue. You can't just be going, well, you know, we can't do the service because of so and so. No. How do we pivot to do it differently? How do we adjust? How do we ensure good quality services? What do our clients need? We expanded to, you know, we were all about getting people jobs. We paused, even though it was very difficult for us and had impact for our funding, and the province and the funders are like, you need to have outcomes for employment. Though we started doing a lot of proposals for mental health services. Who are going to be able to focus on a job when you're worried about your families, yourself, your health, being unhoused, being, you know, increasing food insecurity? All those issues are putting pressure on people's ability to focus on employment. And so we pivoted and got a lot of those kinds of supports in order to ensure that clients have the resources so that when employment does occur, they're in a much more resilient state in order to be successful. So a lot of the case studies really helped me to sort of lean in to some of the concepts to help both my team and myself, because, you know, and Wendy may feel that connection too, is it's hard as the executive director or CEO, you can't really have that little sidebar conversation about how you're feeling and all the emotional strain and challenges that you're undergoing. I'm alone there, right? I'm like, I climbed the hill and I'm standing on the hill by myself, and I gratefully got up on the hill willingly, but I'm by myself on that hill, and it's hard sometimes. And I look back and I'm like, well, Shackleton really could have died, and really navigate it. So you just buckle up, lady, and you could get it done, right? So it's those kinds of things that I think was really critical for me to pull back.
That sounds like a great case study that we all should be pulling out of the
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let's just move on. We've got about 13 minutes, and I don't know if we've got any questions coming in, but here's one that I like. What surprised you about the training itself, Wendy? What's your takeaway there? Like, wow, what was the wow moment for you in terms of the surprise?
I had a series of wow moments, I think. The things that we've been talking about in terms of the connections and the commonality of the issues, that there is a whole, because I didn't go to business school. I went a different route. I have a background in psychology. That's my main area, is of focus academically and in research around access. So that there is a whole school of thinking about the problems that we come up against on a daily basis, that there are places for us to tap in and to see how people have considered these problems in a broader context. Something that surprised me too was just how directly impacted my work could be by this course. So when one of the lectures, one of the sections that I really enjoyed was Dutch Leonard talking about question 0. And question 0 is the question, what are we trying to accomplish? And are we doing what we think we're supposed to be doing? And do all of our stakeholders also think that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing? And it seems like such a basic question, right? But that question sat with me in quite a serious way for the whole of that course. And I really came back to it and chewed it over often. And as a result of that conversation and really, trying to take those steps back, because our noses have been to the grindstone throughout the course of the pandemic, like everybody here. We've been go to keep our community protected and to pivot for PPE and, all of that. And there was a little bit of space here for me to think in the context of the course. And I felt that we could be doing better at meeting our mission of ensuring that the voices of disabled people were being amplified. And it really struck me that we needed to be doing better at this. And I met with one of my senior managers and we talked through a new program, frankly, that we didn't have any funding for, but it was a program that would center disabled people in the development of a new curriculum to teach leaders and managers in the social service sector about disability inclusion. So we'd really been seeing that gap, and we've talked about it a little bit today. And I wanted to see the community itself speak and be the people to go out and say, here's what inclusion looks like for disabled people, and here's how I would need to be included. Here's what you can do to make sure that all of our voices are at the table. And we sort of sketched out this program together. And also that folks would be paid for doing that. It's an important part of our work and our core values that too often disabled people are invited to tables and their expertise is required, but they're not compensated for it. So we worked together to develop a program that would have disabled people involved in the curriculum development and also have them teach it. So they would be teaching this and be paid for it and get the experience, the connections that come. And we sort of sketched this out, and it was amazing because we were starting to look for opportunities to fund it. And we were actually approached by a funder for an invitation-only fund that was specifically about this question of equity and inclusion. And so we had this already developed and we submitted it. And now we actually have $200,000 over the next 2 fiscals to develop the program, to get the community involved. And so we're in the course of hiring the program coordinator for that, and to putting out our feelers into the community for people who are interested, who want to come and contribute to that kind of output. And we want this to be something that's self-sustaining too. And so for everybody who is wondering about, how do we make sure that disabled people are more included, and, where do we start? I think sometimes people are nervous to even start to have that conversation. They don't want to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. I can tell you the wrong thing is saying nothing, right? It's taking no steps. And so for everybody that's here, if you are interested in that kind of work in terms of your organization, give us a year and we will have a course that will be taught by disabled people that can come out and speak to your leaders and your management about that. So, but that is directly because of this course. Question 0 really got to me, and we sat back and considered how do we answer that. And so we have this new program literally that has been born from the work that we did there.
So in part, we can thank Dutch Leonard and Question 0 for $200,000.
Yes, we can. We definitely can.
That's a great story, Wendy. Adam, have you got anything like that you can share in terms of, not necessarily that success story, because that's a winner for sure, but what surprised you about the training? What did you didn't see coming when you got down there?
Yeah, I think reiterating what they said for sure around, I found how practical it was. Just reflecting on my education and other courses, often it's really heavy on theory and very light on practical utility. And I found this one was heavily, focused on more the practical side of things. And again, the point made, which is like all of these things we're doing, there's actually people that have been thinking about them, and there's like best practices around these things that we could be borrowing, I think was super useful. I think the thing, maybe not a surprise, but I thought was interesting, which is it seemed like one of the main purposes of the course and the motivation of the instructors was there's a lot of work to be done in terms of solving some of these social issues in the world. There's a lot of charities and nonprofits doing what we would call good work. But what they were really trying to elevate is saying, let's aim higher. Like, let's figure out if you can be as impactful as possible and figure out what that sort of vision is. And then let's be practical in thinking about what that pathway is to getting there. And then figure out how you can start building those capabilities, those resources in that team to drive that impact. So it really, I think, pushed everyone to kind of step away from their organization and yes, answer that question 0 of like, what are we trying to do? And are we on the right path? But also elevate that bar higher to say, you're working in potentially a fixed mindset here. You could go so much higher potentially than where you are now, with the right plan, with the right kind of steps and processes. And so I found that super interesting, that it kind of blew the roof off a little bit of limitations, and it created a lot of interesting open space to explore, how might we do things differently and really drive towards, I think, the ambitious change that we in our hearts want to be driving towards. So to me, that was a really important takeaway.
That's awesome, Adam. Thank you. We're down to 5 minutes, so we're going to wrap this up in about 3. I do want to pull out a comment here that was put in by Robin. Corey, you 3 are totally inspiring. I suspect you have sparked great interest in others for this scholarship. So, and Robin's a member of our board, and she's actually going to be part of our interviewing committee. So I'm delighted to hear from you. Thank you, Robin. I'm going to give you one minute to answer one thing, and basically start with you, Adam. What did you find the most useful thing about the program? And give us 1 minute, and please don't go over because we're running out of time.
Yeah, I think just the frameworks for me, because one of the challenges is bringing this content back to the office and trying to figure out how to do that change. And so having some practical tools, frameworks that I could start using with the organization was super powerful. I can't reiterate the experience of the teachers or the readings, but I can bring back some of these insights and these frameworks. So I thought that was the most useful for me.
Awesome. Surranna? Same question, please.
As Adam said, the technical learning that you will get it's just unparalleled. You'll be critical. But the biggest takeaway for me was the importance of collective impact, and how you bring in different actors together to solve a social problem, to work together is really critical. And that as an organization, we shouldn't really just focus on only what we do and that the outcomes that we can accomplish, but how can we do more by working with others to do better work. And that is some of the things that we're trying to improve at Skills for Change, by building better partnerships with other organizations to leverage their competencies and support of our work so that we're having deeper, broader impact by leveraging that.
Collaboration. Thank you, Surranna. Wendy, give us your highlight, please. Most useful program. Thing about the program.
I agree with both Adam and Serrana, and I would add relationships. Just the development of the relationships that were afforded by taking part in the course. So that sort of international connection, the connections within the peer group were incredible. And as we've all sort of hinted at, have been sustained. And to know that there is a group of people that you can go to, and regardless, of the fact that we're doing different business, right? We don't offer the same types of programs. We don't necessarily support the same communities, but the questions that we have are the same and the issues are similar, and that I can still reach out to my peer group and say, I have an issue. Has anybody dealt with this before? And where did you go with it? And, that has been really amazing.
Awesome. Sorry. So I'd like to just take a minute to close. The things I heard in the last couple of minutes were made me reflect back on really what are the Harvard Business Club of Toronto focus areas: relationships, education, and community. And I think just paraphrasing what the three of you said, Adam, you said framework, practical tools, technical learnings. So to me, that's really about education. Serrano, you talked about the collective impact and the group together, and of course Wendy, you talked about relationships. So that's really about the community and the networking and the relationships. So I'd like to think that our organization is following what you've talked about and what you've learned today in terms of what we're trying to put out there into the marketplace. Thank you so much today. You really were inspirational. I love the conversation. I'm just so impressed with the three people, and I'm proud to be a part of this. So thank you, and thank you to the attendees. I don't think we have any other comments. Alexi, is there anything else really quickly?
There is no additional questions.
Excellent presentation. So over and out. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you to the attendees. Bye for now.